I met with a very serious accident and broke my six vertebral bones. If you are in dark, the brain will make you alert, you will be more cautious, and you will keep on looking who's there or you will be scared. So, vertebral fracture meant something different for my brain. Got it. In my case.
Hi everyone, this is Vivek Srivastav. Welcome to my channel. And today we have with us Sukanya Patwardhan, and she is a global leadership and neuroplasticity coach. And she has had 30 years experience in shaping human capital across organizations like the Tata Group, IBM, Jade Global Software, and SKF Bearings. Sukanya has led major leadership development programs at organizations like the Tata Global Leadership Center and has been recognized with various leadership and coaching awards. Today, she's the founder and CEO of Mind Boutique, where she uses her extensive corporate experience as well as her expertise in neuroplasticity and neuroscience to help individuals and organizations make lasting changes in all areas. But over and above all of that, I have to speak from personal experience that I've had sessions with her, and her work is really, really effective. And she has this amazing intuitive ability to zero in onto the root cause, the root emotional cause of whatever's the problem really is. So we'll get into all of that today, and I'm really looking forward to this because I think we'll get a lot of valuable information and insights from her. So thank you for joining us, Sukanya, and welcome.
Thank you, Vivek. Thank you so much. It's my pleasure to be here, and I feel very, very honored and humbled for this interaction. Thank you so much.
So, how did you get into becoming a coach and this neuroplasticity? I think you call it eutaptics, right? Or the
Yeah, Eutactics is one of the modalities which uses neuroscience and neuroplasticity. And eutaptics actually means in Italian language changing from a caterpillar to a butterfly.
Oh, really?
And that's the name which is given by the founder of this institute, Skills to Change, Robert Jean Smith.
Okay.
So that's what the name of the modality what I use.
Wonderful, wonderful. So, how did you get started in it?
Okay, so my career has been in HR and mainly as a L&D professional, specializing in leadership development. So therefore, coaching has always been an integral part of my job. It was formal coaching, informal coaching, and actually supporting in the organizations, creating a coaching culture. Because now the command and control cultures are not working since the economy opened, right? And a lot of changes have happened. So practically, I would have read all the self-help books and understand most of the psychometric assessments as a certified practitioner. But however, in 2018 Jan, I met with a very serious accident and broke my six vertebral bones. And then you know that I was bedridden, but the any bone heals between 6 to 8 weeks. So did my vertebral column healed, but a pain just did not go away. And with the best possible medical care, physiotherapy, it just wouldn't go. And I was told by the doctors and a physiotherapist that I should be happy to be just at home for the rest of my life. And that was a major jolt, major shock. And I was wondering, how will I live? If I have another 30 or 40 years of life, what will I do? And that's where my search began, that there must be some other cause than the physical pain. And I found this super sever neuroplasticity expert, Dr. Norman Deutsch. He is a neuropsychiatrist based in Canada, and he has done amazing work, and he's one of the pioneers of neuroplasticity. And he toured around the world because he was intrigued with the patients who were given up by the medical fraternity, and nobody wanted to treat them. But within 2 to 3 years, they got well completely on their own. And this intrigued him. So he took a tour and he interviewed many, many such patients who had met with accidents or had Parkinson's or, had balance problem, had suddenly become blind, many things. And then he wrote a book based on these real stories, The Brain That Heals. And it was a game changer for me. And used it and I completely healed physically, emotionally, just in an year's time, even less than that. And that's where I found Robert Smith's work of actually how to utilize neuroscience and neuroplasticity for your own self. And within a year's time, I started trekking, dancing, gymming, and also took a full time hectic job as a global leader with Jade Global. And then I decided to do advanced certification and completely dedicate myself to this wonderful modality and help many to overcome self limiting beliefs and the negative patterns. And you won't believe, Vivek, now the same doctors and physiotherapists call me to meet other patients.
Nice.
And say, look, if she could get well, you too could.
So,
Right.
are you no longer in any pain at all whatsoever?
Not at all.
Wonderful, wonderful.
I don't even remember that I had such a big accident.
Right.
Was kind of, it was something which where I had lost hope. Emotionally, I was very disturbed. So was my family.
Right, right. I can imagine. Yeah. So, this story kind of makes me think that we are capable of anything, but it's our limiting beliefs that stops us. So, what do you think about in terms of, the belief some people have, rightly or wrongly, that we are actually creating our reality based on our.
Right.
Is that? Would you agree with that? That that's what's happening, or
Let me take you to the neuroscience principle. The brain in human body or any being's body, the brain's only function is to keep that person safe and let the person survive. And what I mean by that is that, say, for example, if you are in dark, the brain will make you alert, you'll be more cautious, and you will keep on looking who's there, or you will be scared, because a brain's objective is that you don't go into darkness because that's not a safe environment for you. So any information which comes to us comes through our five senses: visual, auditory, feelings, or touch, smell, and sound, and taste. So, all this information is validated or assessed at the stem of our brain. And if it is safe for the human being, then only it will go up in the brain. Where the real function of the brain starts is planning, for the information, the innovation or creativity, or making big plans, having big dreams, etc., etc. But if the information is not safe, the brain will not let it go up. Instead, it will put the person in flight, fight, or freeze mode. Period. And let me share an example that suddenly in your house or my house, the smell of a gas comes, our cooking gas, and which it's leaking, it's dangerous. Are we really going to say, oh, what a smell? Let's analyze it? No. I'm sure that if that happens to me, I'll not even tell you what has happened. I will either run from here, shout for help, or I will just be frozen, not knowing what to do. Right? That is everything is to keep me safe. Right? And this keeps on happening all the time in our body. Okay.
So how does all this relate to, in your case, you're initially not being able to heal yourself and then eventually being able to heal yourself, miraculous healing according to the doctors. So how does this brain filtering,
Right.
let's just call
Right.
it, how does it
Yeah.
tie into
Uh,
that?
Now I gave you an example of the smell.
Hmm.
Same way, whatever experiences we have had in our life are stored in our brain. They're just stored.
Right.
And anything similar happens, somewhat similar, somewhat related, some link is there. The brain Googles it and brings that experience forward and assesses it whether it is safe or not for you. And your conscious behavior will be guided by the subconscious. Right? So if I fear dogs, that means I have some memory around dogs,
Right.
which makes me fear it. So anytime I see a dog, the brain Googles it and tells Sukanya, no, that's not for you.
So in your case, your brain was Googling, okay, cannot heal, cannot heal.
No,
In the beginning.
yes, it was Googling a memory, which I realized only after I studied this.
Okay.
I had an uncle when I was just 15 years old. He had met with a spinal injury.
Oh, wow.
He was working in a well. He was changing the turbine and he fell and his spine was broken. And he was with us for 1 full year. Okay, my parents being doctors, they had kept him in the spinal injury center. And I took the training of nursing to nurse him. And I was looking after along with the family for 1 full year.
Wow.
So vertebral fracture meant something different for my brain
Got it.
in my case, right? I did not know. I had forgotten it apparently because this happened somewhere in 80s or early 80s, right? It's long time back, but it got stored. When something similar happened to me, my brain told me this is terrible. This is horrible. You'll not heal because my uncle eventually died.
Oh,
You get it?
oh.
So unless I work on these memories and let go the emotional charge, I wouldn't have been healed.
So letting go of the memory and letting go of the emotional charge allowed the body to heal.
Absolutely. Because it did not then, you know, compelled my conscious to behave that way.
So the body is capable of healing in miraculous ways.
Very much, very much. And you must read this Norman Doidge's work or listen to his YouTube videos. They're absolutely miraculous stories of people who were given up by the doctors, but they changed themselves through their thoughts. Also, another person is Dr. Bruce Lipton, who has proved that genetics is really the stored environment. So that your genes will surface only if you provide the environment. So Vivek, when we talk of lifestyle diseases, what are we doing? Maybe my parents had diabetes, but I am providing the environment for the diabetic gene to surface.
Right. Eat a lot of sugar and that sort of thing.
Yeah, not looking after my body. If I don't do that, the gene will not surface. Simple.
Right.
His pioneering work, epigenetics, right? So, and neuroplasticity is continuously happening within us because the brain tries to heal itself. Yeah.
So you started off actually studying chemistry and materials engineering, which I took a couple of materials courses myself as part of my engineering training. I was an electronics, but part of it was that. So I have had a taste of that. So it's quite interesting that you went towards, human resources and neuroscience and all.
Yeah. So this journey is very interesting. What happened was after I completed my MSc in chemistry, I got a job in physics department of Pune University. They were setting up a big surface science laboratory and they needed somebody who knew chemistry. And then the head of this project and also the vice chancellor of Pune University, Dr. Nigwekar, when I joined as a technical assistant, he said that Sukanya, why don't you do PhD in physics? I said, sir, give me some time to decide what I want to do, but I would love to take this opportunity to do MPhil. So I did the interdisciplinary MPhil in physics chemistry, and my thesis was on metallic glasses. And metallic glasses are mainly used in the aircraft or where corrosion is not should be avoided in such places, right? And that set me thinking that while the world is going ahead technologically, but how much damage are we doing to the natural environment and what will it mean after a few years, right?
Right.
But then it also told me that while we are so modern, but if we want to protect the environment, it is a human mind that needs to be shaped to take care of our world. And what would that mean? Would be social sustainability, right? As a society, are we responsible? Do we want this world to be a good place in every way, not just environment, but a worth living a place? So I decided to take up a career in people development and completed my master's in HR. I went to Tata Institute of Social Sciences. And this catered to my two passions. One is the people development, and the second is technology. And since then, I have been in corporates where my passion in technology and people development could meet together, right? While working with these MNCs, I was deeply impressed with the amazing power they bring to make our world a better place, right? They create many products, they do a lot of things, but along with that, if they really care for the environmental, financial, and social sustainability, the world would be a different place, right? And I met best of the leaders, but with after 20 years of work experience, I decided to take up a formal course. So I went to the University of Cambridge to do my master's in sustainability leadership, one of the best institutes. And I specialized in social sustainability, and my research is on human empowerment, which won an award and commendation. But this was also precursor to my interest in neuroscience and neuroplasticity, which in some ways was discussed in during the master's course with several leaders who cared about social sustainability. So that has been my journey.
Interesting, interesting. I have a question about your time in the corporate world. What was the thing you noticed most that people were struggling with, or sort of almost, I'd say, deficient in the corporate world? Because I've had my experience there and all the office politics and all that. So what did you find was kind of the most common theme, and what people needed to improve on the most?
I have spent almost 30 years with corporates,
Right.
right? I have seen the good, bad, ugly, the best, everything, right? One thing is for sure that the more we are greed driven as a society, the more we tax ourselves, right? And
Mm.
as people move up the ladder, or even if they are early career people, they are under tremendous stress.
Mm.
The
Right.
stress they cannot avoid,
Right.
even if they want to. It compromises their family life, it compromises their health, it compromises their will to positively enjoy life. Okay. And I think it stems down to the ability to regulate your emotions. How much do you really give importance to this? Vis-a-vis, how much do you give importance to how do you live your life fully? Is become a bigger and bigger question, right?
Balanced living.
Yeah, and I found in many organizations for addressing these problems, they're creating more tools rather than looking at the root of the problem and looking at the social sustainability, because corporates in themselves are a society, and this society is actually impacting everything else around them, right?
And
So
I think you said greed, and I think greed really stems more from fear, like
quite
fear of the future, fear of poverty, So that's where the greed comes from. And, uh, you know, uh, that's, I think, just the upbringing, and particularly, say, in a place like India where there's so much poverty you see growing up, that you're scared right since a very young age that this should never happen to me. And then that drives the greed, possibly. Uh,
absolutely, because there is so much uncertainty. Even if you're not poor, you're living amidst poor people,
Exactly, yeah.
and that affects you so much that what if this happens to me? What if is a continuous fear and the insecurity we live in.
And not only that, not only are you seeing it for yourself, your parents, relatives, teachers are also driving that home. If you don't study, this is where, you'll be begging like these beggars over there.
Correct.
And then you can see those beggars. So it's a frightening experience. And yeah, but I've spent 30 years in the US. What's very interesting about my experience is because I was in IT, I interacted with pretty much everyone, all cultures, like from Chinese to Japanese to Koreans to Vietnamese to Middle Easterns to, not too many Europeans, but, Hispanics. And the human nature was the same to lesser degrees, possibly. But, and what I saw most was they were all trying to, at the very basic, uh, ensure that their little silo of power was maintained, and then, of course, build up on that. And the reason I bring that up is because I tried to do process improvement. I studied it, I did certification courses in it, I tried to implement it, and then I got so much resistance there because they did not want to look at the big picture. They didn't want to see this will help the company. This will, in the long term, make my own life easier because a smooth process means, less problems, less disruptions. They were just like, oh, what Vivek is saying is going to disrupt my power base, and that can't be allowed. So, they resisted me, and it was quite interesting. I was just wondering if you ran into that in your work in the corporate world, and, how you got people past that.
Right. See, I think anybody who works in the corporate world or, in a highly competitive kind of world or high pressure jobs, everybody experiences this, even in the government jobs, right? I think what has really happened is within last 100 years or even mainly 50 years or 30 years, the world has changed tremendously, but the humans haven't changed.
Right.
We are still groping with the fact what is really happening.
Like
And
Neanderthal kind of reptilian mind.
reptilian brain is continuously assessing whether this is safe for me or not. Like you said, Vivek is saying something, is Vivek going to take my job? Because that's the data which I have, which is inside of me and which is continuously pumped on the TV or the newspapers or my network, right? And that's what creates problems. So in my case, I was lucky to know what self help is, what coaching is, and also work with organizations which had good kind of infrastructure to mitigate this or prevent this, right? But well, I have had my share of these things as well. Yeah.
So, the what kind of work did you do in the corporate world? Obviously, you weren't doing this neuroplasticity at the time because you hadn't learned about it yet. So, what
Right.
what techniques did you use then? And
Right. So initially, my 10 years were spent as a generalist HR. Okay, right from talent acquisition to separation to compensation to the talent management, everything. And that's where I realized that I belong to people development. I then consciously chose to move into L&D. And that's the opportunity I got with IBM. They were set increasing, growing in India. And that's where I joined as a people manager. And as a HR partner, I was trained in psychometric assessments. So mainly it was with these reports like the DISC or the Hogan or the FIROB or many such psychometric instruments which tell the MBTI uh, that what is your persona like, that what is your inclination like, who you are in the context of that psychometrics. And I found that everybody, each one of us is deeply interested about us. So people love to know what are their highs, what are their lows, what are their uh, you know strengths, the Gallup strength finder. All of these help me connect with people and actually understand what brings out the best in people. And I found there are three things which best bring out the best in people. One is safety, belonging, and mattering. Do I matter in this organization, in this department, in this team? Do I belong here? Do I feel belong? And do I feel safe? And then I actually studied this a bit. And what one of my mentors had told me that if you feel safe, if you feel belong, if you feel mattered within yourself, you will express it in your behavior. And that's a key requirement if you want to work with people. And that's where I focused my attention. And I studied all these self help and found also it became my hobby to follow up and study people who are successful. What is that they're doing? And I found their resilience or their emotional regulation capability is very, very high. They do not give in to pressure. So we used to, being a learning and development leader and leadership development was one very important portfolio I was given. I had great opportunities to design and deliver these programs. And it has its own value. For example, when I was working with Cummins, we had hired the Stephen Covey's program of 7 habits of effective people.
Right.
And we ran it for almost everybody in the organization. It was a residential program for full 6 days,
Wow.
right? And that really unleashed so much in people that I very clearly remember. And there were several other programs. Say in Tata's, I was a director for the Harvard Business Program, where I worked with the faculty. And this was for CEOs and CXOs, and mainly based on the case method, which also talks a lot about the importance of a person. Because it's ultimately people who create this world, right? People who create this technology.
So, what about a startup? For example, like in my case, I have just two full-time employees right now and some freelancers, and of course my co-founder. And we are so small, and things are sort of so tight anyway, budget-wise as well as time-wise, that doing something like that Stephen Covey 6-day program is impossible. Are there any kind of small things that can be done that could?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, what I love about the modern world is the micro learnings.
Yes.
Okay. And you have many such things available on the net free of cost, which are 2 minute learnings, 3 minutes learning, 1 minute learning, you know, and it gives you the concept. It gives you what you really need, right? And now, Vivek, I don't have to talk about ChatGPT.
Right.
Go and ask ChatGPT that I'm going through this situation. This is the context. Give a proper explanation what you want, and it will really advise you, right? The human touch may not be there, but I think most of my learning over last after the social media has come is from social media, and not just the reels, not just what is being posted, but also most importantly how other people are responding to it, right? You read a blog and you also read the comments, and that is a big learning which happens, right? So for startups or where there is a fund crunch or time crunch, I would very strongly recommend having this repository which can be utilized by people.
But there's so many, and how to find the right one? You just ask ChatGPT, is I guess what you're saying.
I think now ChatGPT is doing a good job.
Okay.
Okay. But if you also go into LinkedIn Learning,
Oh.
there are Udemy. There are way too many free courses which are available, right? And Udemy, for example, you have the highest quality courses which are just for 400, 300. They continuously are pumping. Now, EDX as a company, which is a joint venture of Harvard and MIT, they have a model. All courses are free.
Right.
Only when you take the assessment, if you want a certificate, then you have to pay some $100 or something, which is also doable, right? And in organizations also have utilized it, and they are really good courses, right? But the main thing is the skill one requires is to focus and choose, because we get sucked into everything that is available.
Yes. And then not only that, once you start a course, then finish it,
Correct.
Too often what happens is you do the first few days, first week, and then you kind of taper off and it never gets finished.
Correct.
So, but anyway.
And I would also suggest, that be very focused that this is the issue what I'm facing. How do I solve this? Go to Reddit, Quora. These platforms are also good platforms. Also, I have met best of my friends through Facebook or Instagram or LinkedIn, right? People are really happy to help.
I hope you're enjoying the podcast. Before we continue, I want to take a quick moment to tell you about something I'm really excited about: my startup app, Finity. Are you tired of scrolling endlessly and still feeling disconnected? That's why I created Finity. It's not just another social app, it's your connection engine. With Finity, you can instantly discover events, hangouts, and people around you who actually share your vibe. Post about what you love. Be seen by people who get it and turn online into offline. Finity isn't just social, it's real, it's local, it's you. Download Finity today and live your vibe.
Coming back to your career, I think you said you took the course at Cambridge and all of that. When did you decide this was the time to strike out by yourself and no longer be a full-time, job?
See, it started after I met with an accident. It was eye opener for me that what am I doing with my life? What do I want to do next? How long am I going to really work, etc., etc. Right? And that's where then I found this neuroplasticity, Norman Deutsch, and then I felt that I need to have real proper knowledge. So I searched for various courses, and I found this Skills to Change Institute, the course designed by Robert Smith, was excellent. So, but it's quite expensive. So I said that I'll first do level one, which is more about yourself, and then see whether I want to go ahead. And it so happened that Corona started, and the in class program became the hybrid program, which was online but was taught by the real teachers, including Robert Smith, right? So I decided I did that level one. It took me a year because it's a very rigorous program. And then I decided, yes, I want to invest. And therefore, I decided to invest into level two, level three, and level four. At the same time, just before I joined this level one, I joined Jade Global consciously. That was also something, a conscious decision, because at that time, with my credentials, my track record, uh, I could have easily got into big fours. Okay, but I have never worked in a smaller company. And if I wanted to be an entrepreneur, I needed to have that view, that how do small companies work? What struggles do they face? This is a Silicon Valley based company, though not a startup. But with Corona, it had its own share of business problems, right? Plus, I had I was working in the executive team, and what it means for a company to be a living, being is something what I learned in this company. So I think I planned it very well because Vivek, you know it better. Any person who wants to go into a startup mode or wants to go on their own, your funds, your financial, investment, it becomes a big thing,
Yes.
right?
Very
Because sure what's going to happen. Second, I come from a purely a middle class kind of background. So I do not have huge reserves, right?
Right.
I do not have that kind of luxury that I can spend money and if it's not successful, it doesn't matter, right? So I invested these 5 years into this planning, and then I launched, uh, slowly. That's the route I took. In my case, the kind of profession I am in, my skill is central to my business,
Right.
right? People come to me for me
You're a
because
one person.
I am a solopreneur,
Right.
and my skill I cannot be replicated in the sense because the clients are coming to me, right? So my biggest investment was in me, learning, going in this course, practicing, getting mentored, continuously updating me. That I thought was a major investment for me,
Right.
right? Of course, you require a laptop, all those things everybody has, right? I would also say that the company I work for, Jade Global, was very, very gracious and encouraging me. The CEO, Karan Yaramada, I used to say during the Corona times that now we don't commute. Let's use this for learning. And I literally took it and enrolled in this course, right? So that helped me. And they were very gracious to allow me to do the pro bono work with clients on the weekends. That also helped. But of course, they allowed me because I was performing in my main job, right?
So, how did you kind of start getting clients and building up a client list?
Right. So I would give a part of the credit to the course I enrolled in because in level one and level two, you have to do the practice. of actually coaching the client, and you do that with the classmates. In my class, there were 24 people, and the junior batches, the senior batches, you have that fraternity
Right.
and you get to practice. Okay. But after level 2, you have to be on your own and you have to find your own clients. Right. And that's where I got enough confidence after level 2 to speak about this to my friends, to my networks. Right. So whenever I was meeting my friends or see my neighbors, and generally people ask, how do you spend your weekends? Then I would tell them, this is how I'm spending my weekends and this is what I'm doing. And would you like to volunteer? Right. And some people said, yes, we would like to volunteer. And then when I did sessions with one or two, they said, wow, this is fantastic. I would like to recommend somebody else. Would you take on those? And I said, yes. So initially it was pro bono, and I never said no to anyone because I was learning through them. And that's how it all started, actually. This was way back in 2023 when I completed the certification.
Okay.
Uh, then I actually became a practitioner,
Yeah.
you know,
So it's been about 2.5 years, something like
now
that.
years that I have been independently practicing.
So while independently practicing, what have you learned in terms of the sort of things specifically solopreneur coaches run into? What challenges do coaches run into?
Yeah, see, coaching is one of the biggest industry in people development, right? So you are a citizen of America. So you know, in America, everybody has a therapist, everybody has a psychologist, everybody has a coach, and that's also happening in India. So there are big companies like ICF, International Coaching Federation. They offer these certifications, and that is mainly the modality people are using, right? So what I'm using is a little different, and it's the latest technique. Not many people know about it, especially in the corporates, right? So explaining that to people, and where they could see the resonance between what they are doing or what they know, the psychometric instruments they have been using, or the standard practices of coaching the companies are doing, the models of coaching like grow model, how close it is to. So explaining this succinctly, explaining this in layman's language was one challenge which I needed to work on, right? The second challenge in my case I faced because I was continuing in my job as a global head. So it was extremely demanding. And then working on weekends, you're practically working 7 days a week. That means you cannot allow yourself to be tired. So the social commitments
Yeah.
had obviously had to be zero. Learning to say no to things is something was another challenge, especially when it comes to your social commitments. That was one. Third was actually when you're dealing with clients, they're sharing something very personal, something very sensitive in their life, something that matters to them. May not be secret, right? But somebody who says that, well, I'm doing well, but I'm not able to make that money. Can you help me there?
Yeah.
Right? So this is something very, very personal and very, very sensitive to the person. You're dealing with these things. So, and you cannot allow yourself to get bogged down with these things, right?
Right. Yes. You take on your clients' issues, their pain, their drama.
Yeah. Because otherwise, both of you are committing emotional suicide.
Yes.
So it takes you to be really centered, be serene, you know, operate out of that, divine will is something which is a continuous kind of engagement within you that you need to do. Fourth most important thing is taking care of your lifestyle.
Well,
And I had to be careful what I eat, what I don't, what I exercise, how much water I drink, everything.
well, I think that's universal. Whatever you're doing, you got to take care of health.
Right.
particularly a startup, because the stress levels are so high.
Extremely high.
Yeah, it's just
Right. Also, like I think in these kinds of professions and every startup,
no.
you can't afford to, ruin your reputation. Because if it is ruined, probably you may not ever be able to come back.
Yes. Yes.
Because it's a startup. For when you're with a big company and you make big blunder, well, you will have some moment of your low ebb, but you can bounce back.
Right.
But for a startup, you don't have the luxury,
Yes. You can't
right?
have any big mistakes.
You can't. You just can't, right? And plus, you're doing everything all by yourself.
Yeah.
You are the janitor. You are the, administrator. You are everything.
Yes. Very much so.
Yeah.
That's what people don't realize about startups. They come in with this glorified view that, oh, finally now I'm going to be the boss, and I'm going to do it all correctly, and I'll be better than those idiots I work with in the corporate world. And then what happens is you're you're just doing everything. You're begging people half your age to like do the job properly, and you're so sort of dependent on all these people, and you just don't have the financial or time bandwidth to be able to do a lot of sort of fire someone, hire someone else, this, that. I mean, it's just it's the reality is completely different from what you might
Absolutely.
think.
Absolutely. And that I would also give credit to my mentors, especially Robert Jean Smith. When I discussed that I want to give myself full time, he said, Sukanya, first focus on getting that confidence. First focus on getting that knowledge. Even if it means that you're doing it free of cost, giving gift sessions, doesn't matter. But once you have that confidence, until then you are lucky you have a job. Maintain it, keep it. And then at a right time, you launch yourself. Don't hurry about anything. Otherwise, you will have only regret.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Right.
During your time as a practitioner and seeing clients, is there any client story that stands out? I mean, obviously without divulging names or anything, but just something.
I had a client from United States, and he had thrice corona infection,
Mm.
almost broke because he couldn't work,
Right.
obviously, right? And then he came to me. He didn't have money for the sessions. I said, just don't worry about money. As many sessions as required, we will do it. And then we kept working for a while, say for 3 or 4 months. And then this gentleman is also a theater actor, a trained theater actor from Harvard,
Wow.
okay, but had given up acting uh, for some reason.
Mm.
And he had his own, he was actually doing the painting job. And then when we started working, he started feeling better, his health improved, his emotional health improved. And then we were talking about what should he do next. Then it occurred to him, like a aha moment, that he has the acting skill. How about he training or coaching doctors, lawyers to be in front of the camera? Because they're camera shy, right?
Right.
But
It's a skill. I mean, yeah. You
it's a
don't just
skill.
magically have it. You have to train.
Exactly. And he started there. And then he also felt that he had that great aesthetic sense because he understood people. So he could talk to people when they're painting their houses, doing the interiors. He could create their personas, right? And he's today a very successful businessman man. He's
Nice.
doing extremely well. And it's so heartening when we talk that he says that I am so busy and I just don't have time for anything else, right? So that's one story. And other one I would say is
So I had a question about that story. How he was a painter, right? So what during a session, what sort of clicked in his brain, let's say, that made him sort of go back to his roots in theater? Or rather, even the more primary question is, why did he give that up in the first place?
I really wouldn't know because I never inquired into it because he by the time he came to me or many years had passed after his training in Harvard.
Okay.
But what struck with me is somebody who has been trained, who specializes in Russian theater, has toured around the world. He's actually in the theater, not in films.
Right.
Okay, he's worked in some films.
Right.
So this person has a deep understanding of human beings, right? And it showed very clearly from what he used to talk. And because, as mentioned, that the neuroscience, neuroplasticity, he has a store of memories which made him drift away from that career in theater. He wanted to keep it behind. That's fine. But the skill you have, you can always bring it ahead in your future.
Talking about skill, you have that one skill which I was always quite amazed with right from the first session we did was your ability to straight away pick up on the, like I said in the intro, the underlying issue or rather the person's sort of characteristic, like how you just said he had a deep understanding of human behavior, psychology. In my case, also, you picked up on kind of the die hard, whatever. So, how do you do that? Did you have training or is it just God given intuition or what?
I think it's both, but it's mainly training. And the reason is this neuroscience as a science is so interesting that everybody's mind is here to make that person happy, successful, peaceful. Period. Nobody wants to ruin their life, but we let the circumstances govern us and get drifted. That's so true. The moment people start feeling safe, belong, and matter, their real self comes out, right? Which they can't feel at that point of time. But when I'm working with them, it's like a sculptor. You know, the sculptor sees the stone, but not the stone, the actual character in the stone, right? And takes out the all the other things. Though this work is somewhat similar, right? And what has fascinated me that our unconscious is so powerful, it's all the time guiding us to do better. How many times it tells us that, don't eat too much sugar, don't consume alcohol, sleep on time. It keeps telling us all the time, be nice to yourself. So, but Vivek, to answer your question, one has to experience a session.
Right. Okay. Okay. That's fair
That's
enough.
what I would say.
No, that's fair enough. So, coming to startups, the the typical problems a startup person faces is the stress, the uh, doing everything yourself, the lack of finances, lack of time, etc., etc. How can your work help in that? And what are the underlying issues around it that cause these problems in the first place?
Right. One of the things is many people, I mean, I will categorize this into two parts. One is your, so called the tip of the iceberg, what we see.
Right.
There is a fad of startups, therefore I do it.
Yes.
Second, I'm frustrated in my job, therefore I do it. Okay. Third, somebody else has done it. Why don't I do it? It's a big money, quick money.
Yes.
Therefore,
Money.
it's a quick money. Therefore, I do it. Without doing a reality check that if 100% people launch themselves, how many people really succeed and why do they succeed, right? This lack of understanding is one part of it, right?
But
You
that's the tip of the iceberg. You're saying.
That's the tip of the iceberg.
Right.
But below the iceberg, if you were frustrated in your job, you are going to be frustrated in your startup because your brain is trained to be like that in some ways, right? So you got to first work on that, get rid of that, and then you can focus on your startup, right? The second is that continuously the brain is assessing whether what is happening is safe for you or not. Say, for example, you have started your company and there is some inspection happening by some government authorities, right? Now everybody is going to get tensed up. You're not equipped how to handle this, how much money it requires, what does it require, right? So this whole regulation within yourself and anticipating this with positivity is one skill which is very important. In a environment where you are employed, you're protected in a big way.
Yes.
There is a safety net around you. But when you're on your own, there's no safety net,
Definitely.
right? So how do I create my safety net? Is also something proactively people have to do, right? Which I think the below the iceberg, what goes on is what do I feel about myself? Do I feel worthy at all? Because my value
Self-worth.
comes within me, right? My self-worth is going to determine my success, my failure, my everything, right? But instead, if I'm equating it only with money, it may not work. I mean, there's lot below that. Because if you see people who have parents who have been in businesses, the likelihood of these people succeeding is very high.
Higher, yes, yes.
And it's not because the parents have saved money, it is because the training they have got.
And kind of the belief that business
Yeah.
works.
Business works, what it takes to make the business work, right?
Yes.
Those things have happened in their childhood and throughout their life. They've grown with it. So they've imbibed that. If you don't have it, then you have somewhere got to get it from the mentors or books or, looking at your own job as an entrepreneur. Then it really works.
Can I ask about something even more fundamental? I've been, like you said, in America, everyone has a therapist. So I actually went ahead and saw life coaches just as part of my desire for self-improvement, self-development. And I'm quite aware of many aspects of all of this just because of all of that. And it really ties down to two things, right? Your self-worth, sort of self-love that you have for yourself. And then also on the other side, fear, which
Right.
I'm afraid of this, afraid of poverty, afraid of losing my job, whatever, whatever. So afraid of failure. Fear of failure is a big one, I think, that particularly pertains to startups. So would you agree that these are the two sort of fundamental, uh, basic things that if someone
Yes.
sorts them out, then the rest is just sort of bit
Right.
on top of all of this?
Yeah. But let's look at it from the neuroscience lens.
Sure.
What you don't want will drive your life. I
Fear,
repeat,
basically, the fear.
what you don't want will drive your life.
Yeah.
Therefore, the one thing we need to really keep on phrasing things differently. People say, I don't want to be annoyed. You will be annoyed.
Because the subconscious picks up annoyed.
Conscious picks up that.
Just
but instead,
annoyed instead of
say,
I don't. Yeah.
yeah, instead I say, I want to be happy.
Right.
The brain has picked up something, it has Googled everything which is around happiness, and it has let the information pass up, right? It's as simple as that. So you're so right, Vivek. There are two things which govern your self-worth, your self-love, your self-esteem, and your fears. Now it's our choice. What do we want to be governed by? Do we want to be governed by fears?
So how do we change what we are governed by? Like, obviously, at a conscious level, I want everything positive, etc., etc. But somehow, subconsciously, I am picking up on the fears and bad things are
Right.
happening. So how do I change that?
Right. I would say that first is the acceptance,
Okay.
right? That I fear. For example, there is people say that you must make positive affirmations and things will happen. For example, let's make a positive affirmation that I am a millionaire. Okay. Affirmations are always in present tense. So this is my wish. And I make an affirmation, I'm a millionaire.
Sure.
As I make this affirmation, what goes up behind my mind, but how can I be? My parents were never millionaire. How will I become a millionaire?
It's so difficult.
Still.
Hmm.
So what is really operating is this and not that affirmation, right? So if I have these doubts, then I need to clean up those doubts. unless I clean those up, this affirmation is never going to be true.
And
It's as
yeah.
as that, right?
And what you do is zero in on those and clean those out for
Correct.
people.
Correct. So memories will drive you, but the emotional charge of the memories, if that is taken away, it doesn't matter. You will have the memory, but it won't govern your life.
Yeah, it won't have the power.
It won't have the power. For example, I have seen this is a very interesting example I had. This lady came to me and she was the head of supply chain, and she was so good in her work that her management said that you must present your work to the MD, the executive team. Okay. Her manager said that I'm going to give you this opportunity and you must be known to those people. And this was in another 2 weeks' time. And she was so afraid, right, that she had fallen sick and therefore she came to me. And then when we worked on this, the memory which was driving her fear, because she had miserably failed in public speaking in her school.
Oh, okay. It
And then
ties back to that bit.
yeah, right back then she had also forgotten. Then it came on the surface. But since that time, since 7th standard onwards, she completely withdrew herself and chose career which will not put her on limelight, like supply chain, where she felt I love it because I don't have to present to anyone. I just talk to vendors. I don't even have to meet them. I just that's what I like to do. Mainly an administrative role is something I love, right? But she had a great ability to do a great work when this fear was taken out. And she went, and after that presentation happened, she said, Sukanya, I was so surprised that I went in, I was confident. It was like I was talking to them, and she was promoted. Right? But this seems very simple, but these traumatic experiences do govern our life.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, we are pretty much out of time. So, did you have any final words of advice for our viewers, just generally on life or anything, or just
I would say that uh, what I have experienced, you can do it, plan it well, acquire the ability to regulate your emotions, and then focus on excellent service and allow your entire ecosystem to be your promoters. This includes your family, neighbors, your vendors, your suppliers, anybody and everybody. Money, fame, and success are byproducts of your excellence and your demonstrated competency, right? And I'll be more than happy to help you realize your dreams. That's all I can.
And Sukanya's information is going to be down in the description of the podcast below. So please feel free to check that out. And also, please comment on the video and let's have a lively back and forth on all of this. And other than that, thank you so much, Sukanya. And that was very, very interesting, very valuable. Thank you for joining us.
You. Thank you for the opportunity and look forward to our continued interaction. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye bye.